Single player games are all about the campaign. You either have a linear story being told where you, the player, have to uncover different clues or fight different bad guys and eventually beat the boss, save the princess, whatever it is, that's essentially what a campaign is all about. And for single player games, we have been in a golden era of amazing campaigns. However, when it comes to multiplayer games, I feel like the campaigns have kind of, went down in quality or just don't exist at all entirely, which sucks. I don't want to start becoming that guy that goes like, back in my day, everything was better. But it actually isn't. I think a lot of modern games are amazing, including modern multiplayer games. But one thing that I have been noticing is a trend away from stories and campaigns in these multiplayer games when they come out. But back in the day, you would get a full-fledged game. For example, let's look at, Halo 3. In Halo 3, you had this amazing campaign that you could play with your friends on the couch or just completely alone. There were a bunch of really cool, unique features in the campaign, which gave it a ton of replayability. But on top of this campaign, which by itself would be worth a full-priced game, you had an incredible multiplayer experience. A multiplayer that changed the way I am and taught me so many slurs because people were just like really awful in the voice chat back in the day. I mean, that hasn't really changed. And a lot of multiplayer games all kind of did the same thing. They would have a multiplayer that everybody would enjoy, regardless if you played the campaign, but they would also have a campaign. Take Call of Duty, for instance. Call of Duty actually is one of the few modern games that still gives you a full campaign. But before, that campaign was something people actually talked about and cared about. Because the old Call of Duty campaigns were like an Oscar-worthy Saving Private Ryan type film, and the new ones are just Michael Bay schlop. You cared about these characters, Soap, Price, Mason, the numbers Mason, which made the multiplayer feel even richer. A lot of the times the campaign would help influence what the multiplayer would feel like. A lot of the time the maps were inspired around campaign missions, and I always thought that was really cool. But then we fast forward to modern gaming. In modern gaming, with the exception of Call of Duty, has opted to just completely eliminate the campaign from multiplayer games. Take two of my favorite games of all time, Overwatch and Apex Legends. And both of these games have a ton of characters that people really love. They have awesome stories that I wish we as the players could play as. And while Overwatch has given us a couple of those missions here and there to kind of flesh out some characters, even though, Overwatch 2 was supposed to be a full-on campaign and then never came out. But at least in Overwatch's case, I can play some story missions here and there. It's not a full-fledged campaign, but it's something, I guess. But then you take Apex Legends. There's nothing. There's just no way for me to play as these characters that I love outside of a competitive environment. And so you're stuck with only one way to truly understand the characters, understand the world, understand what the games are even about or why you're even in the games or anything. And that is all through comics and just lore online. So now you just gotta read. And I think that is kind of disappointing these days. I feel like a campaign in the Apex Legends universe would be awesome. Is this all just an excuse to talk about Titanfall 2? Yes it is. Titanfall 2 is one of the greatest campaigns ever made. And it didn't have to exist because in Titanfall 1, there really wasn't a campaign. So when the second one came out, we weren't expecting it, but it was insanely good. Trust me. And seeing how it was the same developers, Respawn, that made the Titanfall 2 campaign, I know for a fact that Respawn can pump out another one if they really wanted to. Will they? I don't know. Maybe we'll get Titanfall 3? Huh? So that is just the multiplayer experience now. You get to go in and play this game, but if you want any story, it's going to be in cutscenes, like in Fortnite. There is kind of an overarching story, but it really doesn't matter because it's all about getting them sick emotes. Or let's look at Valorant, for example. I think Valorant has some really awesome characters, and there's clearly a great story being told. It just absolutely sucks that there's no way for us to play those stories. One of the few companies that actually consistently does this is Destiny. But that's because Destiny is definitely campaign focused with multiplayer being kind of a side thing. Like for Destiny, the PvP is that meme of that kid drowning and then you go down underwater and there's like a skull. Yeah, like the PvP is the skull in Destiny. And I don't want to give Bungie any praise right now. Come on. And speaking of Bungie, it's looking like their next game, Marathon, mind you, was a phenomenal campaign back in the day. Groundbreaking game. It's going to be an extraction shooter, which means it will probably not have any story mode. All of these classic games, from Call of Duty 4 all the way to Titanfall 2, all of these are games that have great multiplayer experiences and simultaneously had amazing campaigns. And it's such a shame that we just completely cut out that half of the gaming industry and they just got away with it. Like, sure, I understand that it's free to play, even though, you know, it ends up making them billions and billions of dollars on sick emotes, but since they're already making so much money anyway, why not just give the players another way to spend money by just giving us campaigns again? But developers, if you do decide to give us a campaign again, I would recommend it not be like Halo Infinite's campaign. You see, Halo Infinite's campaign made the, let's just say, Ubisoft decision of making an open world. I have no problem with open worlds. There are plenty of great games that do the open world correctly. But the issue with Halo Infinite is that when you really boil it down to the main story, it's pretty short. It's just padded out by making this world long and boring and takes forever to get around even with the grapple hook. I don't think the campaigns need to necessarily be 1,000 hour long thing. I think as long as the story being told is immersive and enjoyable, that's all we really want. There's a reason people always come back to All Gillied Up in Call of Duty 4 or the classic Halo missions, Titanfall 2, my baby, I love you, the first couple Gears of Wars, Halo Reach, etc, etc. Not every multiplayer game needs a campaign. Nobody's gonna be playing the CSGO campaign. Pause, actually that would be great. I lied. Every multiplayer game should have a campaign. What am I talking about? Why have companies just shifted away from campaigns in general? Short answer, money. It costs money and most players won't even play it or appreciate it, so what's the point? But that's just the thing. I think players would be down to give these companies money to play a story mode, a campaign. I mean, I was ready to pay $60 for Overwatch 2. Why didn't you just drop the story mode, Blizzard? But I think that companies are too afraid to take the risk of creating the story, creating this immersive experience within the same universe of their game. While I do understand the monetization aspect of it, like how do I make more money? How do I make unlimited money with a campaign? I can only sell it one time. You can update the campaign. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to update. You're allowed to give us more. Why do people think there's no money in this? Please, developers, you have to understand. People pay you for emotes. They'll pay you for a full-on campaign. However, I know that to develop a full campaign, it's not as simple as making a Fortnite dance. I just think that the worlds that these games have created deserve to be expanded upon outside of their PvP elements. And I think the worst part about the lack of campaigns is that eventually these games won't exist anymore. I know they're made to last forever, but let's be real, no game has really done that. So once these games move on to the next life, we won't have any way to actually play them. All of my old Halos and Gears of Wars and Call of Duties on my Xbox 360 boxes, I have the discs still, I can still play the campaign. But these games, in 5, 6, 7, 10 years, I don't think they'll even be playable. But if there was perhaps a campaign, it would truly last forever. And who knows, maybe one day we'll get the Apex Legends campaign, the Overwatch 2 campaign, the CSGO story mode, let's go! But until that day comes, I really do think that the era of multiplayer campaigns is pretty much over. Let me know what you guys think. Do you even want a campaign? Is it just me? Could just be me. Also, let me know what your favorite multiplayer game campaign was of all time. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.